In the early days of Tennessee, evangelical Protestants had a monopoly on religion. In 1829, there were only 50 Episcopalians in the entire state, and no congregation at all in its western district. That would soon change. A Mrs. Mary Gloucester and her family had recently settled up the road in LaGrange. A staunch Episcopalian from North Carolina, Mrs. Gloucester was shocked to learn that her new town, boasting 240 residents, 60 houses, and 2 taverns, had no church.
So she got on her horse and rode off to find the bishop, who I believe was in Middle Tennessee, to get him to send a priest to West Tennessee. And she took with her a jug of peach brandy, which she said would prevent her having chills and fever, and an infant grandchild, can you imagine, wrapped up, because she said no robbers or bad people would attack a woman carrying a baby. Well, she got to the bishop, and he said, of course, certainly I'll send you a priest.
Thanks to Mrs. Gloucester's determination, Calvary Episcopal Church became the 3rd congregation in Memphis. It thrives today in its original home, the city's oldest public building in continuous use. On June 10, 1832, the Reverend Thomas Wright began the difficult journey from North Carolina, riding into Memphis on August 3rd. Over the next 2 days, he preached 4 sermons, and though feverish and otherwise indisposed, assisted 10 gentlemen in the founding of Calvary Church.
In 4 weeks, God willing, I shall visit the place again. There's much more intelligence throughout the district than I had anticipated.
Wright was its founder, but the true builder of Calvary in every sense was Reverend Philip Alston. A young man, in just 5 years he built the membership from 15 to 96 and began work on the church that stands today, a building he designed himself.
What he was an optimist. He designed a church that could seat 600 people, and at that time the total population of Memphis was about 1,700.
Dedicated in 1844, the church was commended by a local paper for its
charity of taste. There is no theatrical frippery.
In the beginning, Calvary was a rectangular box with a flat ceiling and a flat front wall where the chancel is today. This appearance was not remedied until 1881, when an English-trained architect, James B. Cook, renovated Calvary's interior, adding the chancel, removing the flat ceiling, and creating the sanctuary in which members worship today.
When you come into Calvary, you enter a small, low-ceilinged vestibule, which is called a narthex in a church. It's a place to hang your umbrella up, but it also prepares you for entering the larger sanctuary or the nave. And then as you look up into the darker colored wooden ceiling, the structure gradually disappears up into shadow. The word nave actually comes from the Latin for ship. And you can almost imagine that you're looking at an upside-down wooden sailing ship.
Calvary is a Gothic revival church. The hallmark of this style is the pointed arch. Originally a structural device, it later became a metaphor for looking toward heaven.
At Calvary, I think one has that sense of coming in off the busy street into a cool, dark, quiet place where it's easy to leave the world behind, both physically and spiritually.
Calvary's exterior is unchanged from the 1840s, with one major exception. The rough red brick was buried beneath layers of stucco.
My personal opinion is that Calvary was stuccoed from the very beginning. And the reasons why are very simple. In the 1840s, Memphis was a brick manufacturing community.
But the brickyards turned out a porous salmon brick.
And you could save a great deal of money by using salmon brick for the structure of your building, but you would protect it by adding a layer of stucco. And it also gave the building the impression of being stone, which of course was intended to make it look much more grand, much more prominent, and much more expensive.
Reverend Alston died in 1846, but his vision proved true. By the mid-50s, Calvary's sanctuary was full. Even the controversial system of pew rental didn't deter attendance. To handle the overflow, the church began its long history of missions, founding in all 5 Episcopal churches in Memphis, as well as a parochial school, the forerunner of St. Mary's Episcopal School for Girls. When the tower was added in 1848, the bell purchased by the first rector was finally given a proper home. Inscribed, "Gather the people, sanctify the congregation." It rang out over the little town, calling to worship the talented men and honorable women Reverend Wright had found on the bluff. But by the late 1840s, the frontier town was on the brink of a major personality change.